Dr. Josephson, welcome to the Admission Guys podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to connect with you guys today.
Yeah, so I know I've known you for a number of years, but I've obviously been fortunate enough to be able to have you as a professor in college, and of course the department that you teach in holds near and dear to my heart because I've graduated twice from that department with an undergrad and master's degree. I don't know if that's cool or not, but yeah. So
Very
we're
cool.
yeah, don't start with me, EJ. But yeah, we're excited to have you join our episode today to talk all about some of the awesome things that you're doing online. So you wrote an amazing article, which will of course have all linked up in the show notes and whatnot. So we're excited to learn more about that. But just for our audience, could you maybe just give us a quick run through on your education journey? Because this is a college admissions podcast, as a student and then professionally as a college professor.
Sure. How much time do we have again? I only say that because I have just such a variety of experiences that led me to being a college professor. And so something that I always tell my students is to just, take that chance. You don't know until you know. And I feel like everything kind of snowballed into this sector that I'm in now because as you know, but maybe not our audience, in addition to being a college professor, I'm also the Associate Dean for the Breen Center for Graduate Success that focuses on career readiness. And it's a role that I'm truly enjoying and I'm loving. But once again, I didn't have a direct path into this position. It just kind of happened, right?
Mhm.
So even in terms of finding, you know, figuring out what college I wanted to go to, it was really just kind of circumstance. I was a first gen student to apply to college. My parents were very supportive, but also they didn't really know the process. They didn't go through it. And actually, I was a little lackadaisical in that I happened to hear about an institution from um, one of my peers in high school who I thought, hey, she's kind of cool. She seems to have it together. If she's looking into this institution, maybe that's what I should do. Turns out she ended up not going there, but I did. And really, college is what you make of it, right? And so I think it was the people and the experiences and the things that I did that really made it valuable. So for my undergrad, I studied business and also political science. So I also studied abroad, really enjoyed that, got a passion, got that travel bug. I went on to get a master's in international policy studies from Australia, La Trobe University over in Melbourne. The reason why I chose Australia was because it was warm, seemed cool. And actually, oddly enough, back then the exchange rate was really in my favor. So it was pretty cost effective to get a graduate degree overseas versus back in the States. And once again, I did do study abroad in my undergrad and got that travel bug. So I thought if I'm going to go on to a graduate degree, might as well do that overseas as well. So I ended up studying international policy studies, got a real passion for working in academia too, because when I was over there, I did some teaching assistant positions and things like that. Came back to the States. I worked for Temple University for a number of years. I worked in the Fox School of Business and really within their department and worked with the vice dean and kind of oversaw some of the academic initiatives that they were doing overseas. And at the same time, I thought, well, I work here. Why not continue on my education? So I started to pursue an additional master's because I could take advantage of tuition remission. So I also obtained a master's in political science from Temple University, focusing on international relations. And at the time, the vice dean really took an interest in me. And this also speaks to how important it is to find a mentor and to just make your passion be known and talk about things. And I had always mentioned to him an interest in, oh, yeah, maybe down the road it'd be fun to be a professor. Oh, maybe sometime when I'm a lot older, I can, pursue that. And it was just kind of an afterthought. And one day he came to me, and I guess they were in a bind because they needed a class to be covered. And he said, oh, well, Kimberlee, you're pursuing graduate work and you already have a master's and you have an interest in international business and international studies. We have a course that needs to be covered in the evenings. And I said, yes, I loved it. And, that's how the teaching started. But before then, I had a very diverse path in terms of trying out different jobs and different opportunities. I've worked for a web marketing firm. I used to work in Manhattan for Harry Winston in sales. I used to work as a freelance researcher for the international campaign to ban landmines. So I had all these different experiences. And it wasn't until I tried something that I realized, oh, this is something I really enjoy. This is what I want to pursue. So in teaching that course at Temple, I gained a love for teaching. And then I pursued my PhD, which is also from La Trobe University in Australia. And yeah, so that's kind of where it is. I've taught at Temple and Lycoming. I adjunct at Rider University. I always wanted to get my foot in the door at LVC. I had a special soft spot, and this goes back to the networking that you do at college. My roommate was from Lidditz, Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
And I came down and I toured the area, and I always just thought this would be a beautiful place to be. So when I knew that there was a college here, I tried to get my foot in the door, and the rest is history. And I've been here for 5 years now.
Wow, that is quite the journey. And I mean, my goodness, the amount of experience and degrees you've collected over the time definitely puts my two to shame. So,
And let's be honest, Cole, banning landmines, always a good thing.
yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and that
exactly.
was something, once again, you're exposed to these things. So in my graduate work, I met a woman who was from Norway who worked for the NGO, so non-governmental organization, ICBL, the uh, campaign to, oh, I'm not even remember, international campaign to ban landmines. And she through reports and she said, hey, you're a native English speaker. I could really use some help with my English writing. Would you want to draft these reports with me? And I said, yes, that'd be great. And, so it really is just by getting out there and voicing interest and connecting with others, you get this wealth of opportunities um, that are presented to you. So I actually have because of such a crazy background and all these experiences, I have a wealth of knowledge to bring into the classroom as well and to discuss with my students, which I really enjoy.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cole and I have both read your article that was in University Magazine, and I think we understand it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
It's fantastic.
But what we wanted to know was what motivated you to write it?
Yeah, well, what really did motivate me is somewhat of a concern. I'm a business professor, and so I tend to think in regards to business concepts and in working at the Breen Center too, I think in terms of how students market themselves, right? And I want to make sure that when they're here at LVC, they are getting value for the degree, right? So why do you go to a higher ed institution? How do you leverage that time there? What's the value that comes along with the whole package deal? And so I actually had written an article and had an idea back when everything shifted to being a remote campus environment. And it was, really made me reflect on what is the value of a residential institution like LVC? What is the purpose of the degree? I actually did a little send off message to all of our seniors talking about, it's not necessarily your GPA, it's your grit and your purpose and your, attitude, could even say ambition. So, and also in thinking about how the degree itself, it's important, but the process is more important than the actual degree, right? Most students don't end up working in their major. I'm not necessarily always doing what it was that I did for my graduate degrees, right? So international relations, and now here I work at the Breen Center on campus. So I started to really appreciate why do you go to college and thinking about that process. And then it made me think more in terms of how college, it is a business, it is a brand, and it is something that people have to decide what's the best choice for me, right? And so when I heard in the news about how there's an interest in, forgiving student loan debt or tuition-free colleges, it also made me think, well, there are those options now. You do have MOOC courses, right? That was actually, I think it was the Times, but there was a year that was called the year of the MOOC, and it was this concern that higher education is going to get wiped out because you have all these free online options. And it didn't happen because people still wanted to go to college, and they still wanted that experience, and they still wanted essentially to make a choice and have a transaction happen. Affordability for higher education isn't really something that attracts a lot of people, right? Think about when you go shopping, you're not necessarily looking for something that's free or cheap, right? You're looking for something that's a premium. And then if you can find it on sale, use a coupon, all the more better, which is something, LVC, we have a lot of different scholarships and programs and discount rates. So, you feel like you're getting real value for that. And also you're taking on this as part of, your personal choice type of thing. So it's just a little bit in terms of my appreciation for what LVC does that motivated me to want to write the article. And then also somewhat as a forewarning of, you know, if there's a change in how the system is financed, it's going to have a ripple effect. It might, for parents and students who are concerned with costs right now, it might sound nice, but also there's a huge infrastructure in place in regards to financing higher education. So, our advancement team, our financial aid counselors, our scholarship and sponsor partners who like to, have these outlets to connect with students, you know, create these funding streams, philanthropic donors who want to have the tax write-offs, right? You're going to remove all of that. And also it kind of removes the brand equity that, institutions build up. So yeah, so that was kind of the motivation, was just my concern of maybe new policies.
That's fantastic. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I took out of your article that I put that it was pretty much how you wrapped everything up, or a quote from you said, it might be better to address why the cost of college is soaring rather than simply accepting the bulge and passing the tuition bill on to the government. So I thought that, of course, really stood out to me. A, because it was highlighted, and B, because just that message is so strong. But that, I don't know if this kind of relates or anything. But my follow up question was, with all of the information that is able to be accessed in this day and age, is a degree from a 4-year institution even necessary?
Yeah, I think it is, because statistics show even for middle skill positions that don't necessarily require advanced education, employers are looking for that. So we actually do know that there's a demand from industry professionals for people to have a college education. Once again, not necessarily because of the degree, but it's could almost think of it as a proof of concept that this individual went through the process, went through, having to adapt to a new environment, had to learn new processes, um, develop new competencies, all of these things. So, um, I actually went to a really interesting educator summit about 2 years ago. And at that educator summit, they said, hey, we're not really concerned with what the student's major is. We're concerned about their motivation, about them wanting to be part of a team, about their ability to connect with others in the workplace, about their ability to learn new programming. So, I mean, if you think in terms of technology, like hard skills, things are changing so quickly. You don't necessarily want to be well versed in one program or software system because that's going to change. What's important is that you know how to acquire that information or tap into those resources. And that's something at a college campus. You have those support services, you have those resources, you have those networks where you can partake in programming that can prepare you for those next steps. I mean, something that I always tell my business students that I think is really unique of LVC is we have crew certification. And crew certification is bystander intervention, right? And workplace hostility is a real problem. So that's something for, I mean, it's true. So
Yes,
that's
it definitely
something for
is true.
students, yeah, to take on these programs and be exposed to these programs makes them more productive and better employees. Um, so degree programs are, you know, very much worth the while because of the process itself.
Mhm. And it is true that, I mean, for any institution typically that you go to, obviously I'm biased to LVC, so is EJ, and you maybe just a little bit. But it is true that all the, I guess, some of the soft skills, intangibles, and just that you learn along the way, really helps students stand out, as well as the network that you build. You said it earlier that it's a lot of it's about the network as well too. So I like that. That's very interesting.
And even on the admission side, Cole, a lot of what Dr. Josephson is talking about, we look at in students who are coming into the college. That
Mhm.
grit, can they work as a team? You know, what have they done in high school? Not just in the classroom, but maybe outside of the classroom.
Yeah, it's all important. It all molds and shapes together in the end.
So,
Yeah.
in speaking about those things, how important is it, and is it necessary for a student to live on campus? Is there benefits of living on campus that maybe a student who doesn't live on campus doesn't get?
I think there is. I don't want to say that you have to. I think it's important to live outside of your parents' house at some point.
Mhm.
But living on campus, you will be exposed to more opportunities just because it's easily accessible, right? When you're on campus, you hear, oh, hey, this event is happening, in 30 minutes. Do you want to come with me, right? Or, oh, this is go. So for the social aspect and for the engagement aspect, it's helpful to be on campus. That being said, if you're a commuter student, make it a point that when you go to campus, be there for the day and just camp out, get your work done there, be there, make that your space. I think living on campus is important just for kind of adapting to a new environment, managing your own schedule, being out of your parents' house or whatever it is type of thing. But also don't be disheartened if if commuting makes the most sense or if you have other obligations or priorities. But try to make it a point that you really take advantage of being there on campus and spending dedicated time. It's kind of like the same advice that when you travel somewhere, try to go off the beaten path, try to really immerse yourself. College shouldn't be, I go to class and I go home. It should be
Yeah.
something where you really immerse yourself and really try to get to know, what's happening and what's going on and getting to know your networks and also creating long lasting relationships. So something that I share with students is in your first year, you should try to make some substantial relationships that in 4 years you can refer to these people for recommendation letters, right? It doesn't look good if your recommendation letters are saying, oh, I've known so and so for, only one semester for my course,
Mhm.
versus you can talk about longevity in addition to the quality of the applicant.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and letters. I know EJ, you write a lot of letters of recommendation for people typically.
Just a few.
Just a few,
Yeah,
yeah.
just a few. But I
Yeah, but
we completely agree in terms of, and I don't know if you know, but my daughter will be a freshman there next year at LVC. And although I only live 4 miles away, she's living on campus because we do think there's so many benefits, my wife and I both. So
it really is true for any student. Insight in mind. We tell our business majors, hey, be present on campus, stop by the departments, come and see us. Because when we hear about a job opportunity or something, of interest, we then, those students who are most engaged with us, those are the ones we reach out to.
Yeah.
And it's just simply because insight in mind. So the more
yeah.
that you're active and engaged on campus, the better off you'll be. And also, we want the success of our students. The success of our students contributes to LVC's success, right?
Hmm.
So we want to make sure that we're providing an environment that creates exposure and creates opportunities, right? When we bring people from off campus to do presentations, we want you to get connected with them. It's all part of the process. And I guess that's another kind of important thing to point out is about how, you know, the student is a target, right? We have employers that contact us looking for certain skill sets, looking to fill job and internship opportunities. So they actually refer to the college as, hey, this is a pipeline, right?
Mm.
So much like how in business you use intermediaries, think about how wonderful in this whole remote environment, how we all use Amazon, right?
Yeah.
I can just put in that search bar what I need and it connects me to that producer,
Hmm.
right? So I like to think of LVC almost as like the Amazon, right?
Hmm.
Company. Whereas an employer will reach out and, hey, we're looking for this, or we have this job opportunity. And then we can connect that employer with our students and who might be the right fit.
Sure. And without getting to know those students, you don't know who the right fit is.
Right, definitely,
Exactly.
definitely.
Yeah, and if LVC is Amazon, EJ, we're basically Prime, you and I. So that's what we'll tell people. But something I know I'm going off script here, but one of the headings that I really liked that stood out to me, and I was hoping that you could maybe just elaborate on, is in your article that said valuable middle skill positions will be sidelined. Could you just talk about that and what that
Sure.
means? I guess.
Yeah, well, and this is the thing, going back to even the initial highlight that you made in regards
Mhm.
to, we should consider why is it so costly, and deal with that rather than passing the buck, passing the bill on to government. Um, Whenever there is a need in the marketplace, right, there tends to be competitors that fill that gap, and um, we have seen in terms of college being so costly that there are different channels and avenues for dealing with those costs or
Mhm.
even working the system. I told you how for my graduate degree, I worked at the institution. So I got my master's degree essentially for free because of tuition remission. So students who are truly resourceful and want to can figure out ways to do college cost effectively. Additionally, there are free programs out there. There are community colleges that have tuition-free opportunities. So there are things already out there. And once again, trying to think in terms of um, how companies respond to the marketplace. I think we will see in the future because everyone is concerned about the cost, right? This is a hot topic, a hot button issue. So you hear in the news about the cost of college rising and cost of college. So I think institutions are going to respond to that and try to figure out, okay, how do we create value, but also how do we create affordability and make it worthwhile? And once again, these other, programs are sprouting up, free micro credential programs and things of that nature. Um, I'm worried that if college becomes free for everyone, it actually minimizes competition. Um, for example, for LVC, a competitor might be a trade school who's
Mhm.
attracting students away, right? Whereas if I can go to college for free, if I can go to a public institution for free, I'm not going to pursue, even if it's only a 18-month program or something like that. Why am I going to pay that out of pocket when I can get a 4-year degree for free that my peers are going to be pursuing? So I'm a
Mhm.
little concerned, and not all skills, have to be obtained through higher education, and not all jobs need, a 4-year degree. So I'd be a little concerned that people who want to, let's say, focus on design work, or my husband's an arborist, right?
Right.
So he does tree work, and so for the landscaping industry, not every landscaper needs to have a 4-year degree and things of that sort. But if you give someone the option of here's something for free, or you
Mhm.
can pursue something else, the smarter, especially if we know that it would be coming out taxpayer dollars. So essentially, you
Mhm.
are paying for it. It's being subsidized. So it's like, do I want to pay taxes for something that I'm not benefiting from, or am I going to take part in it? So that does concern me that some of these middle skilled positions, um, the competitors, the trade schools, the programs that would promote them would be pushed to the wayside,
Right.
and that could be a concern.
Yeah. Thank you.
One question I guess I have, does higher price always mean higher value?
No. However, we
Easy
are,
answer.
yeah, but I mean, think it, we are irrational beings. If we think about consumer behavior, right? The higher the price we usually associate with the better off we must be with it, right? If I could get that. So it doesn't always, but it is a signal of our perception of value, right? How I just said, no one wants to say, oh, I go to the cheap institution. They want to say, I want to go to the premium institution, but maybe they got a great scholarship. Maybe they are taking advantage of, hey, I'm going to do it part-time, or I'm going to see if my employer maybe will want to, assist with paying the degree. And once again, this is another thing. There are avenues to make college cost effective. We want to, one, deal with why are the costs rising, but also two, since the costs are rising, it's creating this need in the market that the market responds to. So a lot of businesses are now footing the bill for college tuition, and wanting to do so because it gives them a tax write-off. It shows community engagement, and it also shows a passion and a value for education, right? And wanting to be involved that way. So, no, it does, higher price doesn't always mean better quality, better service, but there tends to be that expectation in terms of the perception of the consumer, and then also in terms of the bargaining power of the consumer. If I'm paying good money for something, and especially if it feels like an expense, I'm going to expect more out of it. And if
Sure.
I don't get that, I'm going to complain. I'm going to, make noise. I'm going to look elsewhere too, right? And that creates a bad reputation for that brand, for that institution, that organization, and they'll have to deal with that, right? And if you have enough issues and enough complaints and enough people feeling like they're not getting value for what they paid, that will devalue that organization or institution. So really, the supply and demand depends on that perception of value, and then the value creation that occurs. Did I get my money's worth? Was it worthwhile? And actually, something that's a really great thing for LVC students is we've found that most LVC students are able, they feel like they're getting good value, but also they are able to pay off their debt, and they know how to manage it, and they're pretty smart about it, thankfully. And I think that also has a lot to do with their financial aid advisors, the support we give, and just being smart about your choices.
Yeah, all great points, and I guess that leads into really the question that a lot of people ask of why graduation rates are so important. I know with us, our rate is much higher, or I'll say our 4-year graduation rate is much higher compared to the state institutions within Pennsylvania. And I know that that is a lot of the role that you work in as not only as a professor, but as the Breen Center for Graduate Success. Of course, graduation rates are very important to you as well, I would assume. So. Um,
Definitely.
is there anything else from your article that you would like to discuss further, maybe highlight more that we missed out on that you're thinking of or passionate about?
Well, I think something that you just talked about with graduation rates, right? And how this also relates to, paying for something, getting something of
Mhm.
value. I think in terms of like if you have a gym membership, right? If you're paying top dollar for that gym membership, you're going to lace up and go. You're going to feel guilty like, hey, I'm paying this monthly subscription. I got to go. I got to get my money's worth. And then also, even after the fact, I got to make sure it was worthwhile for me to do it, right?
Mhm.
Same sort of thing. College is an investment, right?
Yeah.
And so once again, you have to be smart about it in terms of what can I really manage, what can I afford, and that also means talking to people, getting someone who can advise you in your finances, looking at different resources, coming up with different options, and being flexible with that. But when you are buying into something, it gives you not only the bargaining power, but also that extra incentive of that, okay, I have to follow through. I don't want to waste money. I should go to class. I should, partake in this programming. When I lived overseas, both when I went to school, when I did study abroad in England, but also over in Australia, and also talking to other international students, um, it's a different incentive when you are not footing the bill for yourself.
Yes.
So, for example, the graduate program I was in, I tried to fast track it as quick as I could because I knew about the tuition bill. I knew I'd have to pay it. Whereas I had, a peer who was having it subsidized. He was in his 8th year of his doctorate, right? So just,
Mhm.
yeah, right. But also it was subsidized, and it was almost kind of like, okay, you have to cut the cord and move on. Um, so I think I think the cost of college, once again, it's a concern, but there's a reason for that. It does create an incentive. Also, in terms of graduation rates, for students who maybe are looking to save costs or things like that, try to get out into the market sooner too. Don't delay enrollment. You want to get in from high school to college. You want to get in while your mind is fresh, because a lot of colleges have those placement tests in terms of language or math. You want to get in there while it's fresh, and then also you want to get out as soon as you can too, so you can start earning income and jumpstart your career. So explore options for like winter term courses, which is something that LVC recently launched, summer courses, online courses, even community college courses that you can transfer in that maybe are more cost effective, and kind of keep that ball rolling, because we do know, yes, not every job requires a 4-year degree, but there is an expectation now. Most employers do want to see that, because they want to see that you have gone through a process, that you've gone through this learning uh, and really refinement, right? A transition. 18 to 20-year-olds, that's a pretty interesting time in your life, right? So
Oh
if you're
yeah.
going to transition from, high school to being a young adult and all that sort of stuff, it's kind of nice to have those years of college to really refine that, even figure out who you are and your interests, not just your major or your coursework. And so I think for high schoolers, if you don't need to push it off, don't push it off. Get in there as soon as you can, so then you can get that degree attainment going and then get out into the workforce as quick as you can.
Yeah, getting out there, contributing to society. I couldn't have said it better myself. And it's so funny. I always laugh at like with things like when you pay for something, you appreciate it more. So like I know I've talked with my parents. Not EJ's actually not my dad. I know people think he is, but when I talk with my actual parents, um, about like leaving lights on now that I have my own place, that I make sure every light's off. Whereas before, when I would leave my parents' house, it's like a concert at Madison Square Garden. The TV's going, air conditioning, lights. So it is true about that
Oh,
person. Their eight
totally.
years, eight
That's
year doctorate. Wow.
yeah. And I mean, when you think about it, something I talk about in my class, even, so maybe you remember, Cole, I'm not sure what
Mhm.
course you took with me, but we do talk about um, a rent seeking environment, right? So think about how it's your own money, right? And you're going to go out for breakfast and things like that. You're going to be very aware of the cost. And
Mhm.
okay, if I'm paying this much, will I be full afterwards? Will it satisfy me? Is this what I want? Versus, let's say you get a per diem rate, and once you get a job, sometimes you travel and sometimes you get a per diem rate, right?
Mhm.
If your boss gives you $10 for breakfast and it's part of your per day rate, whereas, hey, you get $10 allotted for breakfast, are you going to just get that coffee, or are you going to splurge a little bit more?
Yeah.
Actually, you're going to splurge a little bit more, right?
Mhm.
And then let's say if you are always spending $10, right? That employer, if you're good, they might say, oh, you know what? They're always going to $10 or more. Let me up that, right? So it's not very efficient. Versus if it's your own money, you're going to be a little bit more aware. So we want
Mhm.
to be mindful of not creating a rent-seeking environment, because we have a lot of institutions and agencies where they have to show a prevalent need. So once again, if I'm that employee and I go on these business trips and I only spend $5 every time on breakfast, even though I'm allotted 10, I only spend $5. Eventually, what is my employer going to say? Oh, you don't need $10. Why do I keep giving you this allotment of $10? I'm going to drop it down to $5, right? So we don't want to create that rent seeking, that, inefficiencies. We'd rather have people really take charge of their destiny as well as their finances when they're pursuing college,
Yeah.
and feel like they have a stake in the game, and understand that, hey, if I'm paying for this, I want to maximize this use. I want to take part in student clubs. I want to be part of student government. I want to join teams. I want to network with my faculty and my colleagues and my friends and all that stuff.
Awesome.
That is
But
so true and such great advice.
yeah, and before we ask our last question, Dr. Josephson, I just want to acknowledge you for all the great things that you do for, I guess, LVC as a community, for our students at the campus, things like that, and just for your overall higher education journey, just committed to helping students over the years, and of course to just sharing the information that you do, your knowledge of wealth. Obviously, I had you as a professor, so I know how smart you are. But we just want to acknowledge you for all the great things that you've done, and I do hope that people get the privilege to have you as a professor someday, wherever that may be. Hopefully, still
Oh,
LVC. But EJ, why don't you send her off with our last question that we always like to ask our audience that she has no clue about?
oh boy.
So I
Yeah.
get to ask it. Okay.
Yep. She can
Well,
hate you,
Doc.
not me.
Well, Dr. Joseph, if you could have a billboard
Oh,
anywhere in the world and millions of people a day would see this billboard, what would the message on the billboard be? What would it say to these people and why? What's your message to the world?
That's a great question. That's a really great question.
I'll be honest, it's really Cole's question. He came up with it.
I don't know what
really?
he's talking about. we're just expert journalists is what we are.
No, well, it's something that I'm a strong advocate of being a self-sufficient individual. I'm an individualist, right? And just I would say, yeah. I don't know how to put it eloquently or in a billboard or a tweet form, but just the idea of, hey, by helping yourself and being able to contribute and be productive, that has a huge spillover effect on society, right? So in being someone who is ambitious, someone who's self-directed, someone who is self-reliant, someone who's a go-getter, right? That's going to have a huge spillover effect on society, and really we'll all be better for it. Another kind of like an analogy that I use in class is this idea of, would you rather be surrounded by people who are where you're the best, let's say you're the best of the best, right? And everyone's beneath you. Or would you rather be in a society where, you're always trying to get ahead because you're surrounded by great people, right? If you're the best of the best and you consider yourself as that, you're not going to have access to really great products, really great ideas, or anything like that because you're the best of the best. Like, always strive to make yourself be part of and exposed to those better opportunities and that competition, and be part of that. Be excited to be challenged. Be excited to really, oh, that person does this better than me, or oh, they did that, or they got advanced this way. That's awesome, because that gives you that momentum of, okay, how did they do it? How can I do it? And what, right? And so I think being self-directed, self-reliant, productive, and proud of what you're doing, I think, that's the best way to really contribute to society, is what do you bring to the table? How do you become part of that group that creates competition and challenges others within society?
Amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
Great. Dr. Josephson, thanks for joining the admission guys today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.